Let me tell you something really interesting. You're navigating something in family law, especially with, let's say, a ex or soon to be ex, or has been an ex, but somehow you're still here in family law, like dealing with stuff. There's there's this really funny thing that happens. I'm gonna break it down. It's like in the midst of all of like the conflict and chaos, there are some like absurdities of like what is happening in your own dynamic, that's just in the dynamic, right? Let's just say that. And you know the truth of it because what we tend to do is we say the blatant, absurd truth when we're like with our girlfriends and we're like stating the absurdity of it, and the friend asks you, like, wait, isn't this? And you're like, yeah, it's absurd. But what happens is then when we actually like are doing work on the case, like in prep for your lawyer meeting, or if you're pro se, you're just like, I gotta do the documentation, it's all jumbled again. It's not so clear. There's a couple things happening there, but the main one that's happening is your nervous system now has like activated, right? Because there's conflict already, there's confusion already, there's gonna be conflict, and someone's bringing confusion, because it keeps getting there. And then you're confused about like, why does this have to be translated this way for my lawyer? Why are my lawyer and I having this like weird disconnect in our conversation, or figuring out how to translate it so it's said just so, so all of that gets like to be really overwhelming, and it takes us a ton of time with the paperwork. It takes this like mental chaos, and like it just feels like your head is spinning, but what happened there is like, guess what, when you were like calling out the absurdity as a blatant like, yeah, and you're with someone and you're like, yeah, I see it too, like, yeah, this is absurd, and you're having a laugh on it, your nervous system's relaxed. It's like, wow, you can see it so clear. So what we get to do is, as you're working through the process, we're like going to work on all of that nervous system work and all of like the patterning that's happening. And a lot of it is your threat detection system is like on fire, so you're like, if I write this, they'll say that. If I write this, they'll say that. Or what if I do this and then this happens? And so it's like, it's going haywire. It is good to look at your risks and like how those are going to feed into what you're writing in the document, what you're providing in the document, what you're going to share in the document, what you're going to talk to your lawyer about, if you have a lawyer, what you want to say to the judge. Like, yes, like we got to look at all the risks. But the hard work is like when we sit down or work on that document, when we have like the clear absurdity in front of us, and you're like, yeah, I see it. There's like another level of real hard work that we have to do in there. Because the thing is like a lot of us, like especially all the trainings of like be a good girl, be a nice girl, do all of that, is we have a hard time like letting the absurdity speak for itself. We have the hard time letting it be exposed. We have a hard time exposing it to ourselves and looking at it ourselves, right? Because then we have to look at something that we kind of like to want. We have to look at something that's hard to look at. We'll keep it at that level for here. But it's not easy. If you're like, I know this, why am I having such a hard time? Our friend said to me, she's like, I'm so smart. And then like I get in that room with him and he's my kryptonite. Like it just all goes backwards, like I just don't feel strong enough to like stay in that solid truth. The reason it's hard is because we have to stay with the solid truth and do the work to stay there before we write the document, before we're in the courtroom. Like we have to do some emergency rewiring, high priority. It's like this needs the attention, this rewiring, this working on it, this like not completely solving it, but solving it enough that like that clarity that comes in, that when you're working on the document and the clarity, you're going to the courtroom and you have it, that when you can start to feel like the confusion and the chaos coming again, that's your nervous system. And it's like going into a threat response again. And you have the tools to work with that in the real time, right? So that you can move forward with clarity. You can move forward faster, more efficiently, but more importantly, like that bit of clarity now sits with you about the situation, this dynamic, how you're responding to it, the work you need to do, and the next paperwork, the next issue, the next hearing, get to keep building, right? So we don't have to make everything clear all at once. We take the issues that we know have to be addressed and we get that clarity through the hard muck that it takes to get through it. And then we protect that clarity, right? Until we can move forward for action. What's needed? What's the ask? What's the help needed? What's the issue you want to raise? What's the question you want to have? What's the part that seems to, you're like, no, when I've checked the law, it seems to me like this is what's happening. And your lawyer, or even maybe it's happening in you in the courtroom, but they're like, no, that doesn't make sense. Then and you're like, no, there's a disconnect here. It's so much easier to navigate all of that when you're like, hey, I know that this is a big issue. Like I do know this is a big issue. I know it falls into one of these buckets that the court system cares about. Like, how can you do what's in your power to navigate all of that, with the clarity and the knowing and being like, yes, this is what I can do. This is my part. I can make the truth be here and sit here in this room, absurdity and all, and I can hold it. With your girlfriends, you might be like, yeah, because so and so is absurd, but like in that room, like, and actually, even with your, when after you're out with your girlfriends, you're like, what part of mine is in this? But especially in that courtroom, it's the dynamic. Okay. So the dynamic is there. So we have to be able to like expose it, even though we're like so like uncomfortable with like maybe even looking at that truth ourselves. It's hard work. Okay. It's hard work. Really thankful for this process. It has its tense moments and then you get a break. And it has its tense moments and you get a break. So we kind of don't get to just like think clearly. We have to like work at the thinking clearly and then the keeping the thinking clearly. It's not the funnest work. We can have some it, but it will be worth it. If you are just having one of these challenges where you're like, I know the issues, but then when I'm in this dynamic or when I'm working on it, go ahead and book a call with me if you're looking for support. We'll see what's going on with your case and where you're getting stuck and how I can partner with you to make things clearer before you meet with your lawyer or, before you step in that courtroom to represent yourself.